He gonna swing on me. I ain't did nothing to that man, bro.
Even the most seasoned partygoers were shocked by what happened last night. The city's most well-known nightclub appeared to be electrified on one of those evenings. The lights were flashing, the music was loud, and the room was crowded with celebrities, influencers, and everyone else in between. Even though most people had come to dance and relax, there were 3 recognized figures with unresolved business, so things were likely to get heated.
I just had to cool off, right? Just get my mind right, man, you know. But I really gotta get this off my chest, man.
Even though the VIP area was crowded, Kirk Frost and young Jock were dressed to impress and not their typical boisterous, chatty selves. They were seated in their corner booth like kings over their court, but something wasn't quite right. They were holding drinks, but neither of them was actually drinking. Instead, their eyes were constantly scanning the crowd. The typical club-goer felt they looked hip as the Jock leaned in to speak to Kirk, who hardly nodded but kept his eyes focused on the center of the dance floor. And calm, but their nonverbal cues conveyed the opposite message. Kirk and Jock had a view of the area from their VIP booth, so they didn't waste any time waiting for anyone, even though people were coming from all directions. Then there was little Scrappy, who had no idea that disaster was on the horizon. He entered with a confident, recognizable swagger, a broad smile, and an air of ownership. The moment he entered the room, he was surrounded by his people taking pictures with partygoers while obviously having a fantastic time and laughing out loud, hugging his acquaintances, and embracing fans. As is always the case when Scrappy appears, the atmosphere changes as people begin to gravitate toward him. While most were merely there for the fun, a few attentive onlookers noticed something else in that dimly illuminated VIP booth across the floor. Not only were Kirk and Jock still restricted to their stairway, but they were also closely examining one another. Scrappy was going to walk straight into the shadows cast by each spotlight. Halfway through a changeover, the DJ even slowed down his rhythm a bit, as though he was attempting to gauge the direction of the energy. Back at the VIP booth, the silence became even more muted, and Kirk leaned in again. Everyone who looked could see how stressed Scrappy was, despite her best efforts to hide it. One of the dancers by the bar paused in the middle of twerking and looked over at Scrappy's booth. Jock nodded, lowered his voice, checked his phone, and then turned to face the club. He indicated Scrappy's area with his chin, but there was no longer any playfulness between them. Kirk narrowed his eyes without drinking or smiling as he saw a waitress bring another round of drinks, but she halted as she got to their booth because of the expressions on their faces. She felt the strain, put the bottle down carefully, said, "Nothing," and stepped back. The real people in the room knew something was happening, even if there were no camera phones yet. A few others sitting next to his booth watched as Kirk and Jock appeared to be waiting for a minute. But as Scrappy was still laughing, one of her buddies leaned in and murmured something. Scrappy glanced over his shoulder toward Kirk and Jock's booth just long enough to allow the moment to linger. They were waiting, not just...
Man, I am frustrated, irritated, man.
It didn't take long for the calm to break. Kirk and young Jock finally stood up from their VIP section and started making their way through the crowd. The energy around them shifted immediately. As the two pushed through, you could see folks step aside. It wasn't loud, no yelling yet, but something about the way they moved made everyone take notice. Scrappy was near the center of the dance floor, still vibing with his people, but he noticed the movement coming straight for him. As Kirk and Jock got close, he turned and gave a nod, like he was trying to keep things cool. "What's up?" Scrappy asked, throwing his arms open casually. He didn't sound tense yet, just curious, maybe even a little cautious. But Jock didn't respond with a smile. Kirk didn't return the gesture. Instead, both stood close enough that personal space wasn't even a thought anymore. The music suddenly felt too loud for the tension in the...
When Kirk and young Jock eventually left their VIP area and began negotiating the crowd, the quiet was suddenly disrupted. The mood around them changed as soon as they did, and you could see others backing off. Their movements attracted everyone's attention, although they weren't yet shouting. He was still in the middle of the dance floor, feeling the enthusiasm of his people, when Scrappy saw the movement coming directly toward him. When Kirk and Jock approached, he turned and nodded as if he was trying to maintain a cool, "What's up?" Jock did not grin as Scrappy held out his arms to ask his question. His tone was curious, slightly apprehensive, but not yet nervous. They didn't even consider personal space anymore because Kirk stood so close, refusing to return the gesture. The music abruptly became too loud for the tension in the air, yet the tone instantly altered, and what had begun as words swiftly transformed into something far more intense. We could hear Jock's voice clearly, even if it was still low, as he was the first to lean in. "Scrap," he replied, looking directly into his eyes. "You've been talking too much. You know exactly what playing both sides is, smiling in our faces, and then running your mouth behind the scenes," said Scrappy, frowning in confusion. That's when the real weight dropped. Kirk took out his phone and put it up as proof, because he believed that since we had the receipts, he wouldn't return to us. "When you were acting oddly last week, Jock came back into the studio. Do you believe that people are devoted to you since they emailed us everything?" Scrappy looked at the phone for a moment, then turned back to Kirk. "That wasn't even the entire conversation," he remarked. "You folks are reading the situation incorrectly. I did say it, but I didn't say what you were attempting to express." He raised his voice slightly, but Kirk did not flinch, replying, "Context or not, you said it, period." The scene was becoming more intense with the so-called proof in hand. Scrappy's face heated and his normally composed demeanor was shaken. He said, "Y'all are acting like I'm some snake, but I have been real with both of you. More times than I can recall, you guys. A Scrappy snap, you think I'm afraid of receipts, but half of you are a lie nonetheless." The loudness had changed, and everyone who hadn't noticed before was now keeping an eye on phones. When the DJ turned down the music a little, security, at the edge of the dance floor, began to move in just enough to be ready. "You want to show the others what you said and how you skillfully discussed me without me present." The assertion hit. The Jock started to approach, but Kirk stopped him, saying, "Let him talk. Let him get it all out. You're ready to burn it all because of a few out-of-context comments, even though I restrained you all because Scrappy wasn't settling down." The crowd was getting close, but not too close. You could tell that everyone in the club understood that it was about putting pride, respect, and trust to the test. The last spark that ignited everything was only a few seconds.
I don't have nobody if y'all ain't with me. I don't have nobody.
Okay.
Like all that talking, cuz I need y'all to show me, cuz, for real.
Scrappy was
At the peak of the ranting, neither Scrappy nor Jock was giving up. The Jock remained motionless as Scrappy moved closer, filling the small gap between them until they were chest to chest. Kirk added, leaning in to give Scrappy one more warning when he saw it coming, but Scrappy had already crossed the line. "You might want to fall back before it gets real," Kirk said. Jock said, "It already is real," and he stepped forward just far enough to get a response a second later. The Jock stumbled backward and collided with a neighboring guy after Scrappy gave him a shove in the chest. A drink flew from a table glass, breaking the music. Before they could even make a cut, chaos broke out. Kirk hurried forward, and they all gathered around him. One of Scrappy's boys jumped in to pull him back, but it only made him push harder. A second member of Scrappy's crew stumbled and ran into another VIP guest while attempting to step in. The audience, which had been watching in silence, was now involved in a real fight as chairs were being flipped and beverages were being poured. Several individuals began recording with their phones up high as the dance floor erupted into a flurry of shouting, pushing, and flashing lights. The nightclub wasn't just watching. They were there when the fight started. Security was pressed for time. In a matter of seconds, bouncers in all black outfits hurried in from all directions. One ran between Scrappy and Jock before any blows could be exchanged, and another seized Kirk from behind and pulled him from the circle. One of Scrappy's men shoved a security guard away while yelling, "Don't touch him like that!" But his group didn't slow down. A woman next to her yelled, and a drink poured over her clothes as the bouncers doubled down and violently separated the group. The tables had been moved, and the booth where Scrappy had been having a party now appeared to have been struck by a Club employees came in behind security as the situation began to settle down to help push back. The crowd pick up broken glasses and try to prevent more patrons from becoming trapped in the middle. When the DJ realized the shift had stopped the music and all noise had stopped except for shouts coming from the front of the club, Kirk and Jock were escorted out through a side entrance, surrounded by 3 security officers. No words, just clenched fists and irate eyes. One of the men grabbing Scrappy's arm whispered, "Let it go, not here," as he pulled his group to the other side of the bar. Clubgoers outside immediately posted recordings of the violence, with voiceovers that claimed, "Yo, that's Scrappy and Jock fighting." Never seen drama pop off like this at a club before. People weren't just reacting, they were picking sides. One commenter wrote after posting a 15-second video that received thousands of views in a matter of minutes. Everyone was out there, and the altercation might have lasted a few seconds. While some claimed Kirk and Jock were acting inappropriately, others accused Scrappy of making matters worse. However, the implications will be far longer because Scrappy has scheduled club partnerships, public appearances, and collaborations with something this public, and because Kirk and Jock have business relationships all throughout Atlanta. It's not just about injured egos. There are actual repercussions, including lost endorsements, damaged relationships, and possibly even legal issues if someone files accusations. What do you think about the issue in general? Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and share your ideas in the comments box below for additional updates.